Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Good morning. Welcome in. Welcome to the show. Are you getting sick of seeing my face yet? All 3 days this week. It's me right here, Guerilla Sports Daily. Wednesday morning, September 18th. It's the opening day of NHL training camp. Technically, it's media day pretty much around the league. I believe so far I've only seen that the Pittsburgh Penguins are getting on the ice today, but it's hockey season is back. We will be down near the Avs practice facility later this afternoon for media day. We'll be meeting with front office, coaches, obviously players. This is an exciting day. It's always a fun day. It feels like the first day of school because you get back into the room and everyone's there and you can see everyone that you didn't see from the end of last season, and you get to catch up with all your, everyone who's in the media room and all the players and all the coaches. Today's a really fun day, especially because, when you cover a playoff team, you don't know when that season's going to end. For the Avs, they were down in a series. They were fighting to stay alive. And the whole time it's like, well, do we have another game? Will we be heading somewhere else? Are we getting on a plane back to Colorado? Like, where are we going? And then it's just done. It's over. Ends. Done. If you cover a non-playoff team, and especially, one that is going to be out, you look at the calendar, you see the end of the season, you see the last regular season game, and you say, well, I know that'll be it. I'll make my preparations to be done after that day. Not the case when you're in any sport covering a playoff team. And so suddenly you're just not going to the rink anymore. So I'm looking forward very much to getting back into the swing of things today. But before then, we've got a good show for you guys here. That news we were tracking yesterday, the WNBA, we got some updates on it. Big news really on the business side of sports. A lot of money exchanging hands today, league decisions being announced today. There's a lot to get into, and we'll talk about all of it, including Jose Altuve doing something that I don't know if he was necessarily thinking when he did it, but we're going to get into it, talk a little bit about it, and then a little bit of news out of the Chicago Blackhawks organization as well. I've been asked to keep today a little bit of a tighter show. We've got someone coming into the studio here right at about 10:30, so I'm going to make sure that I am wrapped up and out of here before then, because you guys know I have the tendency to go a little bit long. But let's get into things here. We're starting with that news that we were tracking yesterday, and we waited till the very end of the show to see what updates we got. Nothing came. Well, the announcement came this morning. The WNBA has announced its 15th franchise, and they are going back to Portland, Oregon. Portland previously had a team from 2000 to 2002. In those 2 years, the teams were owned by the league. In 2002, the WNBA switched their model to make every team have their own individual ownership groups, the way that pretty much every other sports franchise in North America operates. Now that the Arizona Coyotes aren't around anymore. Sorry, Yotes fans. But they, in 2002, the Portland Fire had to fold because there was no ownership group in place that wanted to take them on. So that team folded, and there has been an appetite for the WNBA to return to Portland, Oregon ever since. 12 teams competed in the WNBA this season, whose regular season wraps up this week. As last night, all playoff teams have been, or all playoff spots have been clinched. We know which teams are in, which teams are out. But 12 teams competed this season. Coming up in December, there will actually be an expansion draft for the Golden State Valkyries, who were previously announced along with the WNBA Toronto team. Were also previously announced this year. No name yet for Toronto. The Valkyries will have their expansion draft in December and will begin play next spring, where Toronto and Portland will both wait until 2026, holding their expansion drafts likely around the same time next year. But this is massive for the WNBA. Not that they are expanding. This was something that was in the pipeline and was coming either way. This is a league that's been slowly growing, slowly gaining more fans and marketing their athletes better. So they were in a position to expand. But the injection of youth and excitement and revenue that has come with this past year's draft class, led no doubt by Caitlin Clark and the impact that she has had on every arena she's gone into and every game that's been viewed of hers on TV, has expedited this. Just earlier this year, the WNBA came out and said that they were going to abstain for a little while from returning to Portland, that it was not something that was on their immediate radar, that while Portland was continuing to stay in the crosshairs for expansion, that was something that they weren't really going to be able to deal with in the immediate. Well, now here we are just a few months later, and they are heading back to Portland, Oregon, by popular demand. So that is maybe the ultimate sign of just how big of an impact someone like Caitlin Clark has had on the league. That 6 months ago, these two teams that they announced, that was great. It was really exciting. They were going to get to 14 teams, a nice even number, but now we're in a position with that new TV deal and, new highs in terms of revenue for every single team. They're able to fold another franchise in for 2 years from now. I wanted to say next year, but not really. It's more signs of exciting growth for the WNBA. This is nothing but good for the game of basketball. And really, you hope to see them continue to expand. It's good for cities. It's good for arenas. There's a lot of people that benefit from the success that the WNBA is having right now. Portland, Oregon, the newest home of a WNBA franchise. Let's move over to what I talked about. Jose Altuve, not necessarily a super popular guy after everything the Astros have gone through the last few years with the cheating and the trash cans and all that stuff. Jose Altuve was a bit of a hero there for a while, but everyone's kind of soured on him just a little bit. But he was in the news this morning because last night, and we can't show the highlight here, but a really interesting play. Altuve was at bat and at full speed, and from the broadcast angle, it looks like Altuve hits a ground out to first. Takes kind of a funny short hop and then bounces out past the third baseman into the outfield. Easy throw, first base, out. Well, you started to tell that something was a little bit awry when the camera pans over to first base where, the ball's being thrown for the out. And Altuve's nowhere in frame. Didn't even make an attempt to run towards first. Pretty uncharacteristic for an MLB player, not just Jose Altuve. Well, suddenly you can tell based on the way the first baseman reacts after he catches the ball and touches first base that there's some type of commotion going on at home plate. That, what's going on? Was that an out? Was that a live ball? And when it cuts back, you can see Altuve pointing at his foot, saying, "It hit me in the foot. It hit me in the foot." What Altuve was arguing, and then the Astros manager eventually came out of the dugout and was trying to make the same argument, saying, no, he hit the ball directly down into his own foot. It's a foul ball. That was not a clean hit. That ball was not in play. I don't know why the Astros didn't just continue to make their argument and ask for the umpires to look at the replay, which you can now do in baseball. And again, maybe this isn't a reviewable play, but what Altuve did instead was he chose to, while the manager and the umpire were arguing, remove his shoe and his sock to go up and show the umpire, hey, look, it hit me in the foot. Well, there's uniform rules. You're not allowed to do that, evidently. And the umpire promptly tossed him out of the game, saying you cannot take your bare foot out during a game on television, and tossed him. You even saw the umpire kind of throw his arms up like, what are you doing, man? And again, look, I'm not going to sit here and drag Altuve for this. Clearly, it's either a rule he didn't know existed, wasn't thinking straight, was just kind of in the heat of the argument, and didn't think that it would get that type of reaction. I'm assuming there was a big red spot, a bruise, a welt, something on his foot that he was trying to say, look, that's right where it hit me. I found it a little bit odd that he chose it necessary to put feet pics all over television, but it was him trying to make his argument. Didn't work out. He got tossed. And again, my only guess can be is this is something that's not reviewable, that the Astros couldn't have the umpires take another look at it, although I find that hard to believe given what all they can review in baseball these days. But either way, Altuve learned the hard way. You cannot take your socks and shoes off while you're standing on an MLB baseball field. MLB field. MLB baseball field seems a little bit redundant. MLB field. He was done for the night. And it's a disappointing result, especially when you look at the replay. It looks like it hit his foot. With the benefit of slow-mo, the benefit of replay, it looks like the ball went off his foot and it maybe should have been a foul ball like he was arguing. Let's shift gears here. Heading over to the NHL, the MLB, the NHL, the MLB, NBA, MLS, pretty much all of it. Talking about MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, who owns a lot that's going on in terms of professional sports in Canada. Again, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, not Maple Leafs Sports and Entertainment, although they do own the Toronto Maple Leafs. But why are we talking about them? What is significant about MLSE? Well, Rogers has bought the controlling stake in MLSE for $3.5 billion as of this morning. They purchased 37.5% of MLSE from their competitors, the Bell Corporation, who are the Rogers and Bell are the two largest cell phone and internet providers in Canada. Rogers bought 37.5% of MLSE to go with their already existing 37.5%, making them the majority owner, now owning 75% of MLSE. Again, MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, they own much more than the Toronto Maple Leafs. This deal gives Rogers the controlling stake in Scotiabank Arena, which is the primary downtown arena in Toronto, the NBA's Toronto Raptors, the Toronto FC of the MLS, the Canadian Football League's Toronto Argonauts, and the AHL's Toronto Marlies. In addition to all of that, Rogers already owns the MLB's Toronto Blue Jays and the Rogers Center that sits in downtown Toronto. MLSE currently has a total valuation of $9.3 billion. This is significant on a lot of different fronts. It changes the way that a lot of those teams that we just mentioned are going to be operated, as you've got a board of stakeholders that have a say in this. When it was split out before among three different groups, including two rival companies, Bell and Rogers, who both compete for viewership rights, broadcasting rights, there was reports that sometimes those sides didn't always see eye to eye on how to maybe operate some of these groups, some of these buildings, some of these venues. That is going to change. You're now going to have a lot more representation from just one side. Again, this goes from everything to how the team was evaluated, how individuals in the front office, coaching staffs were evaluated, in addition to how were these buildings and venues being run? How are they being updated? What type of events are coming in? This is going to be significant. And again, it's also significant in what that dollar figure was. We've seen, we saw just recently, right before the season started, MSNBC put out their valuations of NFL franchises. Now, again, that's all encompassing. And the Dallas Cowboys were at the top at $11 billion. And again, that's not just the team, that's all the assets that kind of surround it. Now, while, of course, this is several teams, none of them being NFL, excuse me, this is a significant price that Rogers is paying and a significant valuation put on this company valuation, it's $9.3 billion for a company that has this many assets located in Canada. That just, again, it tells you where we are headed in this current landscape of sports, and especially as we're continuing to see teams, remodel, and not only that, but expand the areas around their facilities. We talked earlier this week about what the Carolina Hurricanes are doing, in that they aren't building a new arena, they're not building a new facility, but really they're just adding everything around it, because that's more revenue, that's more value added to your team and your franchises and your buildings. And with this being more consolidated, it's going to be interesting to see how Rogers changes or impacts the direction that MLSE is headed, and what they do with this $9.3 billion company that they now have, and how they continue to grow it. Again, we'll see if it impacts the way that the Toronto Raptors or Maple Leafs operate. We'll see if, we just had the NHL All-Star Game in Toronto this past year. We'll see how Rogers does that. We'll also see how Rogers handles the newly announced broadcasting rights agreement with TSN, who's owned by Bell. It's going to be interesting to see how this impacts not only what's happening in Toronto, but what type of ripple effect this has throughout the world of sports. As again, I drew that parallel to the Dallas Cowboys earlier. Well, that's just one franchise in one sport. Jerry World down there in Dallas is pretty robust. So it's just another sign that these sports franchises are getting more and more and more valuable. They're becoming a hotter and hotter and hotter commodity to own. And I just can't believe some of the dollar figures we're seeing, especially when you consider this is MLSE operates basically exclusively in Canada. Good for the league, good for the sports, for the different sports that Rogers and MLSE now control. Let's stick with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but for a slightly more fun and lighthearted reason here. Advertising partners have become something that is just part of pro sports now in North America, whether it be on the jerseys. Obviously, they've always been on the floor, on the ice, on the field, things like that. But more and more recently, we've seen that, like I said, they've been added to jerseys, helmets. We even just saw a league-wide partnership with Strauss in the MLB, where preseason and international games, every MLB team will feature the same on-helmet sponsor. Well, teams in the NHL have been doing that for the last couple of years and finding new sponsors that want to advertise with them. And the Toronto Maple Leafs found one of the best so far. They have partnered with Oreo this year to be their official helmet sponsor. And I love that there have been a few teams in the NHL who have tried hard to find the right partner for these sponsorships, knowing that they are their ads. And they're going on the equipment. So not everyone has done this. Last year, I believe it was the Dallas Stars had 7-Eleven. There were some that's just like, hey, you got a good sponsor, you put it on there. You got someone to pay for that advertising space, whatever. There's also perks that I'm sure come with that from the advertiser standpoint, that if you're the official helmet or jersey sponsor, I'm sure you get suites and things like that. There have been a few teams, so you could tell, have been very intentional about who they've gone out and targeted. Last year, Nashville Predators had Visit Nashville, so it went really well with the uniform. 2 years ago, the Pittsburgh Penguins were partnered with a company called Giant Penguin. So again, visually, it worked really well. The colors lined up. And I think what the Toronto Maple Leafs did here with Oreo, it looks great on the helmet. It's already a blue helmet, but they're playing 4D advertiser chess. You see, the Toronto Maple Leafs jersey sponsors are Dairy Farmers of Canada. And how they show that is by using the word milk. So they now have milk and Oreos as their jersey and helmet sponsor. This like single-handedly got me on board with sponsorships for jerseys and helmets. This is outstanding. Again, this is clearly a team inside of MLSE and within the Toronto Maple Leafs who are saying, if we are going to do this, we're going to be intentional about who our partners are, and we're going to do something that our fans can at least enjoy or get on board with. I love this. Milk and Oreos are the two uniform sponsors for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. And again, Oreo just looks so good on the blue helmets. Shout out to the Maple Leafs. Shout out to Oreo. And shout out to the dairy farmers of Canada for all kinds of different reasons. But great work on this. If you got to have ads on your gear, this is the way to do it. I couldn't love it anymore. Going to round things out for today, guys, with a little bit of news out of Chicago and the Blackhawks. Nick Foligno has been named the 35th captain in franchise history. I've got some thoughts on this one. I find it a little bit odd, as this is a guy that's only got a 2-year deal, and you really got a young core that's coming in behind him, who are really looking to be the next wave of true competitiveness in Chicago. Now, I find it confusing in a timeline standpoint. I don't at all question the leadership ability and the impact that Nick Foligno had on the Blackhawks and young players like Connor Bedard last season. Again, this was a guy that I think a lot of people thought at the deadline last year would want to go pursue a Stanley Cup. He's never won one, and he's coming to the end of his career. When he signed with Chicago at the beginning of the season, there were some pieces there that were maybe ones that gave you some optimism for how competitive they could be. It just never really ended up being the case. They were among the worst teams in the league, and it's projected to be similar again this season. And not only were people surprised that Nick Foligno wasn't moved to the deadline, there were a lot of people who I know that cover the Blackhawks who were surprised when they brought him back, not just on a 1-year deal, but on a multi-year deal. So this wasn't something that they were immediately eyeing, that they would be moving on from him at some point this year before the trade deadline. They made the point with the second year of that deal that they saw him in Chicago beyond this season. And now the move announced this morning by the Blackhawks just adds to that. Again, I think it's great for Nick Foligno, and I think it's overall good for the Blackhawks. But again, I just find it funny that coming off of having Jonathan Toews, who was captain there for over a decade, well over a decade, had such a massive impact, brought championships, things like that, to go to a captain that is, I think, pretty clearly a transitional era captain, I think is just a little bit odd. But there is one thing I wanted to show you guys here. I'm going to pull that down. Sorry, Chloe. But I loved the way that they told Nick Foligno that he was being named captain. It was a fun way that they did it at a team meeting last night. I just want to show you guys all real quick.
Last year, we had Seth Jones, Connor Murphy, and Nick Foligno wearing letters. We're going to keep that same group. We're going to make one change, and we're excited tonight to announce that as the 35th captain in Blackhawks history, we're going to name Nick Foligno. And we've got some special guests bringing his new jersey.
What's up?
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Good.
I don't take this lightly. I'm excited about where we're heading. I love the group already, and I know what's coming before us. You know, the leadership group that was here before us, the success that's been here, and I'm excited to get us back to them, and with your help. And I think that's the big thing, is we're going to do this together.
And you guys see, I got this family, and they're the most important thing in the world to me, but this is the next most important thing, and I hope we all feel the same way. So let's get to work.
Just love it. Just love it. Bringing the kids out to have them bring the jersey, I think was just a really nice touch. And again, you can tell even in that video that despite what I was just saying about this being a move that to me on the outside maybe feels a little bit puzzling, you can tell the respect that Nick Foligno has in that room, and just how much he cares about the organization and the folks within those four walls. So congratulations to Nick Foligno, 35th captain in Chicago Blackhawks history. We're going to get out of here for today. Like I said, we've got a busy afternoon ahead of us. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a ton of content coming your guys' way from Colorado Avalanche Media Day right here in Denver. Looking forward to it. But NHL camps are in full swing starting today, tomorrow. We've got Thursday Night Football coming up tomorrow. And we do have a brand new episode of We're the Harrises debuting here in about 30 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on what all we've got going on back there. But new episode coming out very soon. Make sure you guys are tuning into that rapidly. One of the best shows, if not the best show we've got here at Guerilla Sports. But ton of new stuff coming your guys' way today from Avs Media Day, and then we'll have more shows, more content coming your guys' way, all things Avs and NHL throughout the week. So thanks so much for hanging out with us. Chloe back there running the board, making sure you guys can see us, hear us. Big shout out to Chloe, the best Gen Z social media person out there. For Chloe, I'm Jesse Montano. This is Guerilla Sports Daily. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.